Good morning, everybody. Schuyler Callihan here on Between the Ears, and another game, another blowout loss for the West Virginia Mountaineers, 81-65. They fall to TCU. They got crushed by nearly 40 on Saturday against Texas. And last week, I did an episode basically talking about giving Josh Schuyler the full length of the season before we start making any judgments on who should be the coach in 24, 25, and beyond. And I still hold true. As crazy as that sounds, I just think that's just the way it should go. It's the way it should be operated. You give this guy the interim tag. There's no reason to even start really conducting a national search. You can have some guys on your list, but it's not fair to Josh Schuyler. It's not fair to the players. It's not fair to the other coaches on that staff to go and do this. I guess not a coaching search during the middle of the season. You're not going to fire the interim coach. It's not going to happen. This team's 8-16. They're 3-8 in Big 12 play. It's bad. It's really, really bad. And Eilert has been through more adversity than any coach maybe that's ever walked a sideline in college basketball in his first season ever. I don't think there's been any other coach that comes to mind that comes even close to being in the same stratosphere as adversity. However, this team never stood a chance. I'm going to be honest with you. This team, even healthy, I think probably would still, healthy from the beginning, no suspensions for Kirk Reese, no eligibility issues for Raekwon Battle, and Noah Farrakhan, no medical scare for a cook. You take all that out and say it's all the full boat. I still think they're going to struggle when they get to Big 12 play. Now, do they lose those games early in the non-conference? Probably not. They probably find a way to win those games, but I don't think this is a team that's built to win. I really don't. And it's, again, not really an indictment on Josh Eilert because he put this team together in freaking June and July. I mean, what do you expect? I mean, yeah, Kirk Reese is great. Jesse Edwards is really damn good. And Raekwon Battle can be good. But outside of those big three guys, I mean, it's a lot of There's not a lot there. And when you only have two, I would say, consistent players and maybe a third, you're not going to win a lot of ball games. Even if, again, everything was good from the start. But again, this is just a team that just never had it. I think we were all fooled and kind of just glazed over the depth issues and glazed over what's beyond those top three guys. Because Edwards had such a high-profile name in the transfer portal. Kirk Reese, the same thing. Raekwon Battle, a lot of people wanted. And I think we just kind of all got caught up in, hey, these three really quality players, that could be enough for this team to make it to the NCAA tournament. Wrong. We were wrong. The biggest issue with this group, I mean, there's a lot of things, right? I mean, there's the defensive end where no one seems to really care about defending. They don't care that someone scores on them time and time again. There's no physicality. There's just no intensity on that end. There's a lot of things. But the thing that I think will kill a team's chances more than anything, more than all of that I just listed, is selfishness. And I'm not necessarily saying that these players are meaning to be selfish. I'm not saying that's their intentions. But when you average 12.4 assists a game, that's selfish basketball. Unless you're a team that is just built off of ISO. There's not one player on this team that can consistently win in ISO. Not one. I mean, you've got to move the ball. 90%, maybe even 95% of the time, it looks like, and we talked about this on the postgame show last night, they call a play, it gets shut down. All of a sudden, there's no back action off of it. There's no screens. There's no cuts. There's just no ball movement. It's okay if it gets shut down. We all panic. Whoever has the ball's got to try and figure it out and get to the cup. That's not going to work. You look at the best teams in this league, Houston and even Kansas. And I know they beat Kansas, but you look at Kansas, you look at Baylor, you look at Texas Tech. They all moved the ball. You look at the best teams in the country; they moved the ball. Now, last year, West Virginia, they didn't move it that great. Um, they were a little bit better. They were 160th, I believe, nationally in assists per game. But there were some guys on that roster that could conceivably win off of ISO. This group, not so much. You've just, I mean, you look at the offense and there's nothing there. They're not really running anything. And for whatever reason, when they go and play away from the Coliseum, it's like helter skelter. I mean, they're averaging 60 or 61 points a game on the road. I haven't looked up what the assist splits are home and away, but I'm sure it's not good either. And if they're averaging, say, 12.4 assists a game, may not even be hitting double digits on the road. I don't know. I'd have to look that up, but you got to move the ball. You don't move the ball, you don't have a chance. Again, unless you have guys that can just win out of ISO time and time again, and you don't have that. And I it's kind of a tricky thing because there's only 8 games left guaranteed. You got the 7 regular season games, you have the one at least guaranteed game in Kansas City, the Big 12 tournament. And in some ways, I'm talking about not being selfish, but at this point in the season, not within your play, but I think more so within the attitude in which you play with, you got to think of it as being a little bit selfish because you're 8-16. You're not going to make a tournament. It's just not happening unless you win the Big 12, which that's not going to take place either. But you have 8 games left. Just because you're not making the tournament doesn't mean that you just give up on the season. You've got to put the best tape out there for whether it's the next head coach at WVU, whether it's a coach somewhere else when you go in the transfer portal, whether it's a scout at the NBA or more than likely scouts overseas. You've got to put good tape out there regardless of your record. People that are going to be interested in you are going to look at how you play in these final 8 games and see, uh, yeah, you can tell he's given up a little bit. He's being a little selfish with his play. Again, not with his attitude. That's 2 different things. Selfish with the attitude is, hey, I've got to take advantage of these last 8 opportunities because that's what's going to make me look pretty good or appealing to scouts or opposing coaches. But selfish with your play, you can't just start going down there and you get the ball, you bring it up the court, you don't run any offense, and you just go to the cup. Taking bad shots, making bad decisions. These games matter. May not matter for the NCAA tournament resume because that thing has been crumbled up, ripped apart, and thrown away in the trash. But it matters for these kids moving forward. They have to understand that. It's not about trying to get to an NCAA tournament right now. It's not. That's the brutal reality of it all. But you've got to be willing to kind of take a step back and say, this still matters. I still have to do this. I still have to put out good stuff. Because if you don't, no one's going to be interested in you come next or come here in April or May when the portal starts opening up. But back to the brutal truth of all of this. There's just not enough talent on this team. There's not. And when you have a mix of not having enough talent and not having enough talent that cares, this is the product that you're going to get. 8-16, 3-8. There's not enough emotion. There's not enough, again, intensity. That's the two things that you really look for in college basketball players. You're not going to shoot 45% from the field every night. You're not going to shoot 40% from three. You're not going to have a game where you have 9 assists and no turnovers every night. You're not going to hold people to 60 points a game unless you're playing West Virginia. That is. But you're not going to play perfect basketball at this level. But the two things that you can do is play with emotion and intensity. And that is absolutely non-existent on this team. If it wasn't, you would see them be much closer in these games. You would see them probably have a couple of road wins, but it's just not there. And again, you combine that with the lack of talent. This is what the story is. The story has already been written. And a couple of days ago, I did an article on what the ESPN matchup predictor said for the final 9 games, and that was before the Texas game. They didn't. It projects West Virginia to not win a single game the rest of the way. And even though they got blown out these last 2 games, I find that hard to believe that they would not win another game and finish the year. What would that be, like 8-23 or something like that? But I don't think it's totally out of the realm of possibilities. I mean, you got to show that you care. You got to move the ball. You got to play defense. If you don't do any of those things, you're not winning any games. This team is not talented enough. And no, they're not talented enough to make a run in March. The top end of this team is talented. Let's not get that confused. Kirk Crusa, Jesse Edwards, Raekwon Battle, those guys are talented. But there's not that combination within those 3 guys where they're talented and the intensity level was there every single night. It's just not. And we can be honest about that. It is some nights. It is on every other possession or every 3 or 4 possessions, but it's not there consistently. And those guys have to show that every single minute of every single game. So when they get to Kansas City, might be a quick trip. And Ren Baker will then be able to get into his coaching search, and then we will have our thoughts on whether Eilert should be back or not. But until then, like I said, in regards to Josh, just let it play out. Okay, maybe I'm wrong about all this. I've been wrong many a time before. If they somehow put together some decent run here, they win some ball games, they win a couple of games in Kansas City, maybe this thing looks a little different. We look at it through a different lens and say, you know what, Josh went through all this adversity, found a way to win some games at the end. Maybe he needs an actual chance at this. But if this stuff continues, again, it's not really all on him because it's just he put a team together last minute. Everybody else had their chance to get the guys they wanted, and Josh was stuck there like Will Smith when everybody in the house left, and he's just standing there thinking, "Where'd everybody go?" And that's what he's got to work with right now. So we're almost there, folks. We're almost there to the end of the basketball season. Baseball does start this week. I believe we're going to try and get a baseball preview up this week at some point. We'll start diving into some baseball. Spring footballs are also around the corner, so we'll have some more fun things to talk about here on the show. So, but yeah, we'll still dabble into some basketball, but baseball and football coming around the corner. So we'll get into all that. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube at Mountaineers Now. Give us a like and a follow at the same handle on X. And we'll be back tomorrow with another episode.